session and we were a little bit late. Our apologies to you who are so patient to tune in by television, live streaming, or those of you who attend our meetings. So I want to call the June 11, 2018 council meeting to order, and we will have first our introductions. We always begin our meetings with an expression of inspiration or an invocation, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation is given by council members intended to solemnize our proceedings. And while we have religious diversity in our community, we recognize there are those of us without religious faith. And you're welcome to stand for this moment, or if the person, Council Member Driggs, is going to deliver our invocation, he'll lead us. And then after the invocation, I would like to ask you to stand for our Pledge of Allegiance.
So I will stand, those who wish to join me.
Introduction, sorry. I forgot.
We got introductions.
Okay. I'll come back.
Heavenly Father, accept our thanks for this day and all its blessings. We ask that you guide and direct our efforts to serve our community and everyone who lives in it. Grant that each of us may be just and fair and act as good stewards of the trust that our citizens have placed in us. Bless those who work with us to serve our community, particularly those who do so at grave personal risk to themselves. May Charlotte always be a place that we all can be proud of to call home. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now have introductions of the people at the dais, and we'll start with our Deputy City Clerk.
Good evening, Emily Lindsay, Deputy City Clerk.
Good evening, Matt Newton, District 5.
Tarek Bakari, District 6.
Greg Phipps, District 4.
Good evening, Lawana Mayfield, District 3.
Good evening, Dimple Ajmera, at large.
Good evening, James Mitchell at large.
Good evening, I'm Vi Lyles, Mayor.
Good evening, Julie Eisel, Mayor Pro Tem at large.
Happy Monday, Braxton Winston at large.
Ed Driggs, District 7.
Good evening, Justin Harlow, District 2.
Larkin Eggleston, the most powerful district, District 1.
Marcus Jones, City Manager.
Bob Heyman, City Attorney.
You're going to get cut.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to start with our public forum, and I have, if you wanted to sign up and haven't had a chance to, please come down and see our deputy clerk. We have this public forum twice a month, and we have speakers come down and speak to us for 3 minutes, and we take 10 speakers. So our first speaker today is Michael Sullenberger. Please come down. Good to see you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Smallenberger, and I am the chair of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Community Relations Subcommittee on Education and Young Leaders. Tonight I have a couple of members with the Education Young Leaders Subcommittee with me here tonight, and I'd like to acknowledge them. If you will please stand.
Thank you for your service. We really appreciate it.
The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Community Relations Committee is the human relations agency of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. The Education Young Leaders Subcommittee in particular has a mission of developing and strengthening coalitions in our community that are centered around education and the development of young leaders. I think today, more than perhaps in recent memory, the work that we do is important since we deal directly with education and young leaders. Recently, the Harvard University and UC Berkeley study ranked Charlotte 50th out of 50 of large U.S. cities in the United States in terms of intergenerational mobility. And also subsequently, the Opportunity Task Force report highlighted a couple of specific areas that we can address in order to increase that ranking. And all of these pertain to education and young leaders. Those three determinants were early care and education, college and career readiness, and child and family stability. What we have done since March of 2017 is we've invited and spoken to with well over 60 nonprofits on a monthly basis. And instead of trying to prescribe some kind of solution that we thought would alleviate that issue, what we've asked them to do is to tell us what their strengths are, what their challenges are and where they see opportunities. Now, since I'm only allotted 3 minutes tonight, that's hardly sufficient time to convey that message that we've received from those nonprofits to you here tonight. So what I'm asking of you here tonight is we would like to establish a more informal but more consistent dialogue with all of you. One of the things that we hear most consistently from these nonprofits is that they simply want to know that their work is acknowledged by our elected officials and also aware of in the community. So the thing that I'm asking of you here tonight is when I reach out to you via email or phone, please take that email or that phone call, and please, please, please allow us an opportunity to talk to you so we can continue to convey that message from these nonprofits.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your work and what you're doing in education and the idea of collaboration for our children's success. We've spoken, and I look forward to having everyone be completely aware of what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
We now have Pastor Stevenson, Brenda Stevenson. Yes. And let's see, we will need the microphone there. Thank you, Ms. Oliver. It's good to see you, Pastor Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm proud of you. Good to see you, too.
We'll take it and pass it. If you give it to the city attorney right there on the end, turn around behind you.
Only it's the first time here.
That's okay. Everybody's got to have a first time. I hope you'll come back. So, all right, Pastor Stevenson.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mayor and Councilman. If I sound like I have a cold, I do. We've been working with summer camp. We just got out. And the reason why we're here, we need a van. We are taking children with Medicaid, free summer camp, $125 spaces. These parents need to be picked up, and I don't have ample transportation along with feeding in my neighborhood and the seniors, and that's why I'm here. And thank God I came in right on time.
Okay, thank you very much. We really appreciate the work that you do in our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. The next person that we have to speak is Mr. Eschert, Ray Eschert.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council representatives, the city manager, assistant managers, attending department leaders, and representatives. My name is Ray Escher, and I am here on behalf of South Charlotte Partners Incorporated, a nonprofit advocacy organization for South Charlotte. We are here this evening to share our appreciation for the increase in this year's budget for our area. To begin, we would like to recognize our District 7 City Council representative, Mr. Driggs, who has worked very hard in supporting our efforts and to obtaining some of this money. Thank you, Ed. Okay, you each have a copy of the letter. I'm going to read it to you. I will try to be as quick as possible. I write this on behalf of South Charlotte Partners and the Ballantine Breakfast Club to express appreciation for the funding allocated for South Charlotte in the 2019 proposed budget. South Charlotte Partners is a new nonprofit advocacy organization formed as a unified voice in response to issues impacting the area related to community, continued growth, and development. Our goal is to advocate for the needs of our area in a positive way. We express our appreciation on behalf of the area's residents and the businesses for this increase in this year's budget allocation to South Charlotte. This includes $20 million in funding for the extension of Bryan Farms Road, which was needed, and an additional $5 million, we hope, for additional public safety projects. We sincerely hope that the city will continue to consider funding for improvements in the area as the area continues to grow. The goal of South Charlotte Partners is very simple. It is to work very closely in the coming years with the city in the identification of value-added projects in this area that will contribute to the economic growth of all of Charlotte. Thank you again for your financial support, and we truly do appreciate it. You've done a great job, and again, I have to commend Ed. Way to go. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much,
All
Mr.
right.
Escher.
How often does that happen?
Ed, I
huh?
tell you.
Edric's
Mayor,
fan club.
may I also recognize Victoria Nwasike, who's in the room and who is a member of the Board of Directors of South Charlotte Partner and has been a major contributor. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Lateria Lassiter. Lateria Lassiter, are you here? Okay, then our next speaker that's signed up is Antoine James. Mr. James? Please come down.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We need to see the footage of Operation Avalanche. They go too far. That is not how officers' temperament should be in basic traffic stops. Just because citizens live in supposed high crime areas does not mean police should be harsh towards folks in those stops. And City Council should view the footage and see how far off LaWanna Mayfield really is. After viewing it, you will easily see she's pretty much on target. Millennials, change agents. Will we have to wait and see, as your predecessors have said through the years, for you to take action? It's about race. Do not be afraid to say it is. True and beyond belief for the constituents of Ed Driggs and Julie Islett. I mean, surely Councilman Harlow doesn't think that his colleagues go home and call him a nigger or worse based on his race, but many of their constituents do, and the police are an extension arm of that bigotry, hate, and bias to folks that are just making a living, wanting to enjoy lives like the people in Myers Park and South Charlotte. True and beyond the belief of some constituents that support terrorizing protocols of CMPD, high crime areas, you cannot separate us living in a society where more anguish is displayed over protesting unequal treatment than mass murderers. We know you know that there are currently members in the department who do not rock with people of color at all. They do not hang out with any, they do not break bread with any, and that leads to aggressive temperaments you will see if you saw the footage on Operation Avalanche. That type of behavior comes too easy. It's not fair to anyone to be policed by someone who already has a bias against you. I encourage city leaders to watch the footage of this operation. It was good enough for the officers to publish the results in the Charlotte Observer. Why not allow city leadership to view the inner workings of this operation? Where is the integrity and transparency we expect from CMPD? City Lab just reported more whites get tickets than blacks because when an officer pulls a white person over, they actually have done something. The whites in our community are not preyed on by police like the people of color are, and that's not the way it should be. What does this world-class city want from its police force? One of terror or one of hope? If it's hope, it remains elusive. If it's terror, then we have it. And I also would like to enter a question. I don't need an answer for it. I just want to enter a question publicly. Who does City Manager Jones work for? Thank you.
Thank you. So just to answer that question, the mayor and the city council each have one vote to hire 2 people, one of whom is the city manager and one is three people, sorry.
City manager.
I looked over at Emily and thought, oh, 3. So the city mayor and city council hire 3 people, the city manager, the city attorney, and the city clerk. So, and thank you for bringing your perspective to us. Okay, do I have any other speakers signed up for this evening? Okay, so then our public forum is now, sorry.
What are we pointing at?
I did call Ms. Lassiter. I called Ms. Lassiter.
Okay, they're here for agenda items.
Right. Right, I'm sorry. The person that was signed up that I called Lateria Lassiter. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now that we've completed our public forum, we go to our what we call our consent agenda, where we take a motion for a number of items all together. And tonight, I would like to have a motion for items 29 through 56 with the following exceptions. Item 33, who has a speaker. 35, which will move to the business agenda for a discussion and vote there. Item 30, will move to the business agenda as well as item 44. So we will move to the business agenda, items 30, 35, and 44. We have speakers for items 33 and 47. So I would like to have a motion for items 29 through 56 with the exception of those that I noted.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, so we'll start off with those for our speakers. We have on item 33, a parking citation management system and related services, and we have one speaker, Kelsey Owens. Kelsey? Is Kelsey here? Thank you for, come on down.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. My name is Kelsey Owens. I'm the sales director for the Southeast region at Passport.
Hi, my name is Titus Mana. I'm the client success executive for Passport.
And we came here tonight. We recently worked with the city's procurement team on an RFP for a citation management for parking platform for both the city and the aviation department. So first and foremost, I wanted to say thank you to the procurement team. They did a wonderful job throughout this entire RFP process, and we really appreciate all of their hard work. As some of you guys may know, Passport is based here in uptown Charlotte, and so we really are excited about the opportunity to work with the city on all of the unique needs that we currently have. All of Passport's 130 employees work here and live here and play here in the Queen City, and they're all very thrilled for this opportunity to work with our city. And because of this RFP opportunity, Passport's actually going to be able to hire 2 additional employees right here in uptown Charlotte. So we just wanted to come here tonight to say thank you so much to the hardworking team at the city and to all of you as well.
Thank you. Since I don't have a vote on this matter, I'm going to go ahead and say blatantly, I really love your office space and what you've done and how you've created what I think is part of our new economy. You've got great team members working together in very open environments and in a way that I think that wasn't even imagined 5 years ago. And I understand you guys are in London now.
We are.
So that's very cool, very cool.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you saying that.
Thank you. So do I have a motion for approval? A motion for adoption? I want to get a motion on the table for discussion.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Oh, no, now we have discussion. Mr. Winston.
I just have one question. I understand we contract our parking citation duties to Parkit. Is that correct?
We're going to ask our staff. You guys, you can go ahead and have a seat again. We're going to ask our staff to come down. I think this is a question for the staff.
That's correct.
Thank you. I want to be right one time today, at least.
Oh.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Dennis. I'm the Public Service Division Manager with Charlotte DOT, and the Parkit program falls under my division. The answer to your question, we have a couple of different contracts. So we have a contract with a vendor who provides the actual computer technology and the handheld units that produce these citations. So when the agents are out on the street, they're using these units, and that's what Passport would be providing in this case. We do also contract with an operations consultant, and that would be Republic Parking, and they are the ones who provide the customer service and also the agents that are doing the work. So it's 2 separate contracts. They don't contract with each other, but they both contract with us separately.
All right. Are there any other questions? Any discussion? I don't think that means that I think you get a lot more parking tickets because if you're in this job, you probably ought to get many.
I just have one
Yes,
follow-up.
Mr. Winston.
If we contract our services out and the folks that we contract those services out will be using this software, why would they not be the ones to purchase this?
This opportunity is one of those where so it's the airport and Charlotte DOT both have parking enforcement programs. And the selection of that software could potentially be a conflict of interest because the vendor who we use, the consultant that we use, the contractor that we use, to provide the parking services, they also have, under their umbrella company, they provide this kind of technology, so we separate them for that reason.
All right, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, thank you. The next item on our agenda we have speakers. On item 47, we'll do the speakers first and then come back to 34. Ms. Maxwell and Mr. Maxwell, would you please come down? And this is, again, agenda item 44. It's one of the city, I'm sorry, 47. It's an interim remedy at 10620 Independence Hill. Yes, please, just state your name and we'll go ahead and get started.
I'm Catherine Maxwell, and thank you, Madam Mayor, councilmen, and councilwomen, and sorry for my confusion a few minutes ago. I'm new at this. We appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of our family to request that you either do not approve or allow an extension of the demolition ordinance on our former home at 10620 Independence Hill Road. My brothers and I grew up in this home. It was beautiful, and our parents kept it pristine for 40 years or more. After our father passed away and our mother went to a nursing home, we tried renting the house several times. Unfortunately, between renters, the HVAC system and other items were stolen. After multiple thefts, we decided to board up the house to prevent further damage to our home until a better solution could be found. Approximately a week later, my brother went to check the house. The screws had been removed from the plywood blocking the doors. They stole the plywood and the plundering began. We reported this to the police several times, but it's out in the country, or was, and the thefts continued. They took the doorknobs, the stove, the dishwasher, plus any metallic objects. They tore out the copper and plumbing under the house. They removed the copper gutters and the cap to the chimney. They pulled the bathtubs through the walls and tore the drywall to find more copper wiring. With the gutters removed, the chimney cap gone, the house began leaking and eventually the ceiling caved in. At this point, we felt hopeless in trying to protect the house. We all lived 30 miles or more away from home and couldn't monitor it. Couldn't monitor it constantly enough anyway. We built gates and they tore them down. We tried multiple times to secure the plywood barriers, and every time they were removed. I might also mention that the old historic homestead on the property, our grandparents' home, was burned to the ground by vandals, and we worked with the city to clean that up at our out-of-pocket expense of over $10,000. Since being notified by the City of Charlotte, we've worked closely with City of Charlotte representatives throughout the deferral process of the proposed demolition. They've been excellent to work with, and we really have appreciated their help and clear communications. We're now under contract to sell the property to Mattamy Homes, which plans to build a residential development on the property. We anticipate closing within the calendar year, and the first thing they intend to do is to tear it down. Therefore, since the house will be demolished soon by Mattamy Homes, and since the demolition prior to that will be a financial hardship to our family, we request that you do not approve the demolition order at this time. We're grateful for your time and for your consideration and for the ongoing communication from the city officials. my brother Tom, who is also with me here tonight.
All right. Yes, Mr. Maxwell, if you'd like to continue, you're signed up to speak as well.
Thank you. I believe that my sister has already covered all the pertinent items that we wish to make sure that you are aware of. The only item remaining is that the reason that the property became so difficult to manage was because a large portion of the property was taken for the path of 485. And as a result of that, it made it impossible for us to protect it. And so it was not of our making that this happened. This was forced by the taking of the right-of-way and the construction work that took place. We want to thank you for your consideration of this matter and hope that we'll have a nice end to this mess as soon as Mattamy tears that house down. Thank you.
Thank you. So what I hear you ask is for 7 months, you said by the end of the year you expect to close on the property and they would tear it down after you closed? Okay, so that might be 2019. No, 2019. I just want to clarify,
Right.
how long will the closing take for the property to sit where it's sitting today?
We anticipate that the closing will be complete and the house will be torn down by the end of the year. That is my understanding. I can't guarantee that, but we know that what they have assured us is that we anticipate closing within the calendar year and that they intend to tear the house down immediately.
I don't know, you have to ask.
And that's.
All right, I have Mayor Pro Tem and then Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm just looking at, I was just trying to pull it up, it kept
We're looking at Google
referring
Maps.
to, it's not Huntersville, is it?
It's right
It's on,
It's in Mecklenburg, unincorporated area of Mecklenburg.
Okay, how many, what's the land, what's the size of the piece of land it's on?
There is a total of 60 acres, 50 of which are under contract.
So the piece that you're selling to Mattamy is how much?
50 acres, and it includes the house.
So the house is in the middle of 50 acres?
correct.
There's no other house around there?
That is correct.
Okay. And I was going to ask why it is taking so long to close on the sale, but presumably they're looking at the 50 acres.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mitchell?
Madam Mayor, all the questions have been addressed.
Okay. And Mr. Eggleston?
I guess just as a process question to staff, if Mattamy's going to have to bear the cost of the demolition at some point anyway, could the demolition take place now and it just be held as a lien against the house that Mattamy would have to pay? That way the current owners aren't burdened by it, but it's remediated, and then to Mattamy it should come out as should be about a wash.
Is that a motion?
I guess I don't know if it can be.
All right, the question, all right, Mr. Chris, I'm sorry, who over here wants to speak?
I have a question.
Ms. Mayfield and Ms. Ashmira.
Just trying to figure out if that's something we could do that way, so that
So, Mr. Chris, Mr. Eggleston, please ask, I'm sorry, Christ, sorry.
That's okay, Mayor, we know you're working only a couple hours of sleep.
My question makes sense.
I'm telling you.
Yes,
All right.
good evening. My name is Ben Kreis. I'm the Division Manager for Code Enforcement. To answer your question, Councilmember, if the property was to be demolished, a lien is placed on that property and could be part of the closing, and Mattamy it could be negotiated to be a part of their responsibility in that closing. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, I have Ms. Mayfield.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Kreis, with the statement that you just made, we're hearing a request from the homeowners. I'm wondering if it really would be in the best interest of the city to spend funds to demolish a home when we know that they're in negotiation contracts of selling the land and the home. Would this be an opportunity for us not to spend the cost that would be associated and wait for it to be paid back at a later date, because we don't charge homeowners immediately for any demolition. It just goes on to the cost, onto the deed. So I'm wondering if we have an opportunity not to expend the funds to do a demolition if my colleagues decided that they wanted to extend this, opposed to us paying for it and then have to wait to be reimbursed for it.
We do bill, okay, upon demolition. If that bill is not paid, then a lien is placed on the property, and it would subsequently hold a priority place with regard to taxes, et cetera, the priority of where that lien would fall. It's my recommendation, after having been out there today, okay, that the Maxwells would still own the property if the structure was demolished, okay, and could still broker their deal with Mattamy. It is an extremely unsafe structure. I personally, in my professional opinion, would not enter that structure today. The roof is collapsing, the floor is collapsing, there's active dumping on site, and there's evidence that somebody is shooting off of the back porch because there are spent shotgun shells. It's my recommendation to council that we proceed with the demolition and allow the owners who would still have the land to negotiate that cost into their deal with Mattamy Homes and whatever that private negotiation would be.
Okay, you've heard the staff recommendation. I have Ms. Sajmira, Mr. Driggs, and Mr. Phipps.
Thank you. I think he clarified all my questions, so I'll make a motion to move forward with this.
We already have a motion in a second.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We already, I think we had a motion to approve it already. No, we did not, Ms. Clerk. So we have a motion to follow through with the demolition. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll have now further discussion. So I have Mr. Driggs.
So a question for the Maxwells. It looks like there are 10 of you or so who have an interest in the property. Why would you not just pay the $10,000 or $12,000 that it says here it costs to demolish it and sell the land free and clear for a little more money and recover that cost?
Our understanding, the 10 to 12 include minors, and it is our understanding, the children, not just my 3 brothers and I, it's their sons and our spouses. Our understanding is it would cost significantly more than that.
But the intention is, your expectation is the house will be demolished. We're not talking about preserving something of sentimental value. We're just talking about the mechanics of the transaction through which the land transfers to Mattamy. So if the city is prepared to demolish the house and then wants to be paid back when the sale is consummated, I don't see why that's a bad outcome.
All right.
I mean, and your option otherwise is to go ahead and do it yourselves and remove the action that's being started by the city and then sell the land free and clear, which presumably actually fetches a slightly higher price because then the new owner doesn't have to deal with the demolition.
The prospective purchaser already has equipment on the site because they are contiguous with our property and will be...
Could you speak a little louder?
Can't hear you.
The purchaser has equipment on the border to the property at the rear and will not have to do anywhere near as much transportation and logistics in order to accomplish this task compared to what the city would have to do. It's going to cost us probably more than $10,000, and that comes out of our pocket before. And that's what we're concerned about.
I don't see why the sale price doesn't reflect that. Okay.
All right. I have Mr. Eggleston and then Mayor Pro Tem. No. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Phipps and then Mr. Eggleston.
Yeah, so I guess in my conversations earlier with, the attorney, I thought they made mention of the fact that there was some sentimental value in wanting to preserve the structure for demolition until the year end as opposed to doing it now. So are you saying that you are conducive to the demolition, sooner than that?
The only reason that we would prefer to let them do it is because it's 10,000 to 15,000 more.
I've heard of 50.
I've
heard a quote of 50.
My brother-in-law is quite versed in this area, and he is of the opinion that it's going to be closer to, he said, $50,000 to do this demo. Now, I don't know. I'm not an expert.
I understand.
But I do know that it is coming out of our pocket in the net proceeds, and our purchaser is not going to charge us anything.
Okay, we have a motion. Mr. Eggleston, did you have? Okay, Mr. Eggleston?
Just wondered what our policy was if we estimate the demolition cost, if there's,
right.
You're saying you think it's going to cost a good bit more. If we've estimated $10,960, do we have an obligation to come within 10% of that, plus or minus, or how do we, surely we can't estimate essentially $11,000 and come in at 30. So what's is that a pretty set number?
They don't want demolished.
They are extremely accurate. I'm not going to say it always is exactly a number, but after having visited that site today in the number of years that we've been doing demolitions, I project that 10,960 is accurate, fairly accurate. We will take bids from the multiple qualified vendors that we have through our RFP process, and we will award that way.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to demolish, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
We have one opposed. All right, so you have please work with the city staff, and I hope we'll get all of that ironed out. So the demolition, the order for demolition has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. So those are our final items under the consent agenda. The other remaining items we will take up as a part of our business agenda. Now we'll go to our policy agenda, which is item number 9, the city manager's report.
So thank you, Mayor, members of council. Tonight is that time of year where we recognize the employee of the year. So I have 2 items under the city manager's report. One is the recognition of the employee of the year, and then we'll have I believe, a brief update on the South End plan prior to that vote on the policy. So with that said, I would like to spend just a couple of minutes before, as Mike Davis makes his way down. It's not Mike Davis. Mike Davis is going to.
No one thought it
was. Mike and I will.
Mike, we still like you very much.
Speak for yourself.
Before the confetti started coming out and things, I just wanted to make sure, but Mike and I will tag team on this. But I do want to talk a little bit about the last year in terms of what we're trying to do related to employee engagement. So what we've done is, outside of just having a couple of meetings a month as it relates to the leadership team and the department heads, we're also trying to bring more employees into the loop in terms of the things that we're trying to accomplish as a city. As a matter of fact, this Wednesday we'll hold our first City Managers Connect, where it includes 175 employees at varying levels throughout the organization, where we talk about just not vision, but some of the projects that are occurring. So we're very excited about the Wednesday meeting. But even before that, we've had a great deal of input from our employees, including the Queens team, which is a group of employees, about 80, that no one's in the management or supervisory level. It's the folks that are on the ground that are working each day, and we have quarterly meetings with them. I think you remember the meet and eats that we had throughout the community. We also had one for just the employees, where we had 1,000 employees come by and break bread with their fellow workmates. We've also had a Gov Porch that's been outside of the building over the course of the last year. First Fridays, where it's an opportunity for employees to get together. And also, we have our innovation labs that have been working on the CLT 250 and how we can really talk about community engagement and community building. With that said, what we have at this time is this great opportunity to announce our Employee of the Year, and that is William Bill Bibby. We're very excited to have this opportunity to introduce him tonight. And instead of me reading some of the notes that are in front of me, there's no one better than Mike Davis, who William works with, to talk a little bit about William. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, and Madam Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce Bill Bibby, who is this year's Employee of the Year. Bill is an employee of the Engineering and Property Management Department, and he is the City of Charlotte Cemetery Operations Manager. So from my perspective, the best employees are often the ones who are excited about what they do and can make you excited about what they do as well, and Bill is that guy. So I got to know Bill shortly after I became city engineer about a year ago, and I learned that the city operates and cares for 7 public cemeteries. Bill gets me excited about cemeteries, which I would not have thought was possible. Bill was brought on as a cemetery operations manager 3 years ago and has brought with him deep knowledge in his field. He's an innovator, and he's constantly bringing new ideas forward. He's gone to work with an ambitious agenda to operate more efficiently, restore dignity to cemeteries that have damaged monuments, and engaging with the public to help tell Charlotte's history through its cemeteries. So Bill is an avid student of history, and if you ever get the chance, I encourage you to talk to him about it. I learn a lot every time I talk to Bill, and I think you will too. Lastly, you should know Bill is also our reigning champion in cornhole for our annual Department Appreciation Picnic. So Mr. Manager, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words, and I turn it back over to you.
Okay, so now it's time for William to come on out, receive his plaque.
I will end you in cornhole.
Would you like, you don't have to sit back down. You can actually give us a few words if you don't mind.
Speech.
He didn't.
Speech.
He seems
No,
like
not him, you.
he seems like the strong silent type. He was going right back to his seat.
I haven't heard that. I've actually heard that he gives some really good tours.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, I've done a lot of tours, let me tell you. I've done about 200 tours since I've been here for the last 3 years.
Wow.
And I get very passionate. I know Gina Shell's somewhere. So Gina, if I get any of this, just let me know when I'm done. That's usually when she tells me it's time to quit, Bill.
Okay.
So, cemeteries are I get very passionate about cemeteries. I feel that they are the outside history books. There are, not one family is the same. I give pleasure with the people that I work with. My 9 crew members, unfortunately or fortunately, we take it as about 500 deaths a year. And this ranges from little babies to people that are 110 years old. But to manage 192 acres is difficult. But my biggest thing is, for everybody in here, if I had something really to say, is death comes at any time. So I like to tell people the best thing about death is life. Right. And life is the best thing God has given us to everybody, and we're all unique. Mm-hmm. So with that, with some of the problems we have going on in the city, they're just growing problems. And I see it. I was here in the 80s, and I've seen it grow very big in a short amount of time. So I thank everybody who voted for me. I thank the individuals who actually took their time to write it all up. They knew more stuff about me than I did, so. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
How do you get on the tours?
I'm sorry, you don't get to sit down quietly
Mr.
yet.
I'd like to know how you can get on one of the tours.
Yeah. You die, but you
Well, I know that many of people around this dais celebrated McDeck Day, but there's a historical group, and they actually asked for those tours, and that's how I became acquainted with it. And so thank you for what you're doing. You know, too often we forget that the people that work for us, that live in our city, are our citizens. And that makes a big difference. And I want to say that to about every one of our employees, is that they're not people that are just here for a paycheck. They're just out there getting the same services that everybody else gets. And I think that it brings both accountability and responsibility, but I like to think it brings forward people like you. So thank you very much. We'd rather spend a lot more time talking about celebrating, but I think we're going to go back to Mr. Jones for a second presentation.
So thank you, Mayor, members of council. So in terms of agenda item 10, the South End Vision Plan, I believe Tylo is making himself available if there are any questions, not necessarily a presentation, because there was an update at the last strategy session meeting. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Phipps.
Yes, Mr.
and
Phipps,
Tylo.
if you'll introduce this action
Thank
for
you.
us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you,
And
Mayor.
Tylo, if you make yourself available if there are questions.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. It brings me great pleasure to bring the South End Vision Plan to you. I mean, we all got a copy of this massive book here. I know we've all had a chance to read it by now and become familiar with it, and we've had some great discussions. I'd like to start off by thanking Charlotte Center City Partners and Mr. Michael Smith and his team. Would y'all just please stand for a minute to just be, or wave to be recognized or whatever. They did some hard work on this plan. Also like to thank the planning staff for the tremendous work that they did on this plan, along with the stakeholder group that helped them put this plan together. Now, this South End Vision Plan focuses on the area surrounding 4 station areas, envisioning a South End that continues to be on Charlotte's leading edge of urban livability, technology, and sustainability. The South End Vision Plan is a highly graphic new format for area plans that will serve as a model moving forward. Matter of fact, I was talking to Tay-Wo. I think this plan really is a precursor to what we're trying to do with our UDO process in the level of detail and vision that it's embodied in these pages in this work. It has really comprehensive public engagement, a vested steering committee, and additional discussion in committee. In the Transportation and Planning Committee, we recommended the plan for adoption at our last meeting. The Planning Committee of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission has reviewed the plan, and they also recommended approval at their May 15th meeting. And as I said, we recommended approval and movement to you all's consideration at our May 29th meeting. Just to highlight key areas of the committee's discussion and support for this plan includes reducing barriers to affordable housing and incorporating incentives for affordable housing in the current update to the transit-oriented development zoning district, recognition of the shifting demographics of the neighborhood, and the importance of including amenities and daily services for all ages and socioeconomic levels. We think adoption of this plan is timely, and the recommendation of this plan is currently guided by the development and update of the transit-oriented development zoning district, review of development and rezoning proposals, and prioritization of public investment. So the recommendations from the South End Vision Plan are already in motion with short-term corridor improvements by Charlotte Department of Transportation, the new transit-oriented development zoning districts, a new pedestrian rail crossing, and several initiatives underway by Charlotte Center City Partners. So it's with I encourage my colleagues to adopt it. This plan has been worked on now, I guess, for over like 20 months. And Taywell, you might can add some highlights into what went into this overall project in terms of how we got to this huge document here. A lot of work that's been employed to get us to this point for adoption tonight.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Phipps. You're right, 20 months, but I only got here 5 months ago. So, the people who really did the heavy lifting under Deborah Campbell, Assistant City Manager Deborah Campbell's leadership, were Ed McKinney, Assistant Director, and also Monica Holmes, who really did the heavy lifting. So I came at a good time to be able to get it in front of you to this point. So yes, a lot went into this. A lot of community meetings, but also working with Center City partners to really be able to make sure that we took care of all the things that we needed to be taken care of. But prior to us coming to TAP on May 29, I believe we met with a number of you just to make sure that certain things were highlighted and beefed up, such as affordable housing. The language in the document was to strengthen that, but also to show you that eventually when we have updated area plans in the future, or even our comprehensive plan that we've been back on, this gives us a taste of what that will look like at the end of the day. And this is really what sets the tone for how effective a unified development ordinance could be.
Move to approve.
We have a motion. We had a motion and then a second. We now have discussion. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to the Planning Department and to Center City Partners for the hard work on this, and to all the citizens that got engaged in this process. I know a lot of work went into it, and this is a really critical area because of the light rail and the investment we have in the light rail, and it's changing quickly. I think it mentioned somewhere in here there's almost $4 billion worth of investment that's either happened or is happening since 2005. So my question is, Mr. Driggs alluded to it, that this is a precursor for the UDO, and to me this is sort of a really important snapshot, this area.
Mr. Phipps.
Did I say Mr. Phipps?
No, you said Mr. Driggs.
Oh.
That's the fifth time in a week.
I thought you were talking about Mr. Driggs' other question. I thought you were going to ask that. Okay, sorry.
To what Mr. Phipps said, with it being a precursor to the UDO, and that's the part that I have a little anxiety over, because this area is changing so fast. We're approving conventional rezonings in this area. To me, conventional rezonings are sort of close your eyes and vote, because we don't really know what's going in there, and I'm worried that this area is going to change so quickly as people get in their conventional rezonings before we can take a look at the the TOD language, and I know you're working on that draft, but you mention it here in this plan that this review identified areas of the current TOD regulations that need to be strengthened to fulfill the purpose set out in the TOD ordinance. And so I'd like you to just comment on that how this will connect to the work that we want to do, and in particular, do we have the will to then go back after TODA is written, go back and do corrective rezonings in this area so that we can get it right and really follow through on the vision of this plan?
The plan actually is to see where we can do corrective rezonings even before you adopt a TOD ordinance in the future. And we had a conversation earlier today that the plan is sometime in the fall. We will bring opportunities before you to do corrective rezonings in certain station areas so that things can begin to happen prior to even getting a UDO adopted. What you have in front of you is simply a vision and aspiration of what the community wants. What happens with the TOD, whether A, B, C, D, depending on level of intensity, A being the most intense, D the least intense. What this does is to allow the TOD ordinance and subsequently the Unified Development Ordinance to be able to implement this vision here. But prior to us getting to that, there are certain zoning districts right now around some of these TOD station areas that are not transit supportive. the goal is to be able to do some corrections to those even before you get to adopt the TOD ordinance in the near future, not after.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have Ms. Ashmira.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to make a brief remark on an important step that we had taken with this South End Vision Plan to incorporate diverse price point housing in our recommendation. So thanks to staff and Chair's leadership and all the committee members for taking an important step forward on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Winston?
I just wanted to kind of point that out as well. While this plan leaves a lot of, it's not perfect, and it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, which plans are in a way supposed to do. I will say it does include in the final version much more forceful language. After this was initially presented to us in the Transportation Planning Committee, I voiced my displeasure. I thought the initial plan we were presented with was more of the status quo that kind of tap dance around the need for affordable housing or diverse price points. But I went right to Taiwo, I went right to Michael Smith and Center City Partners, and we had some pretty frank discussions. And I think we're able to get closer to what we need. I don't think it's perfect. I think it speaks to what the Mayor Pro Tem was talking about. Until we get this vision, until we get this comprehensive vision, we're always going to kind of be playing from behind, and we can't stop the business of growing our city until we get there, but we need to get there pretty quickly. And also wanted to give a shout to the Planning Commission, because in this final version, the Planning Commission took a pretty bold step in adopting the statement and vision on affordable housing for the city of Charlotte. So I thank you for giving us this tool that helps us chip away and further get to where we need to get to. So still a lot of work to do, but definitely a stronger final version than the initial version we were presented with a couple months ago.
Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to take a moment to commend Michael Smith and his team. We've been out in the community at numerous meetings throughout South End for a good, really, 2 years plus having this conversation. Taiwo, long before you came, as you mentioned, you've only been here a couple of months, staff knows that I have not been a fan of TOD because I felt like it was too expansive. And the amount of development, when you look at light rail, those who we hoped would have an opportunity are the ones who honestly have been displaced. And when you look at South End and you look at Wilmore and you look at all the development that is happening in the community, those who are more likely to use public transportation or where public transportation is the most economical form of transportation for them have been put in a position where they needed to identify new housing. And I've had concerns regarding how we move forward. So I am thankful that you saw an opportunity with working with Center City Partners and specifically not only the South End for this South End Vision Plan, but with the neighborhood, because the South End Neighborhood Association is extremely active. And I want to leave it out, I only see maybe 1 or 2 people here. I want to make sure that all of you that were part of all of these multiple meetings that had happened at different times of the day, different days of the week, thank you for being at the table in order to create this plan that hopefully will help guide us as the city continues to grow and we continue to figure out transportation connectivity, which is why I moved for us to approve it, because I have not been a fan of TOD at all. So I'm glad to see that we're making some steps in the right direction. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Driggs?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate a point I made earlier at our dinner session, that this plan has many good things in it, and I appreciate the work that went into it. It's not actually supported by a commitment of resources on the part of the city. And one assumes that there will need to be one, that there are things that will arise from this that we're going to want to include in our capital plans. So I'd just like to avoid a situation, as we have had a couple of times, where we adopt a plan, and then the resource commitment comes along, and we're told, oh, you guys agreed to do this. We haven't agreed to spend any money yet. And I hope that when the time comes closer and we're able to get specific about where the city engagement should occur, that it comes to us with an open range of possible decisions and not as something that we have already basically bound ourselves to. Because it's not here. You know, the extent to which this particular plan will be supported in our CIP in future cycles is not laid out. So this gives us a clear guidepost, a direction, and I get that, and I look forward to seeing the implementation. But I would just note that the question about what resources we commit and when has not been asked or answered yet. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Phipps?
Yes, you know, after reading this plan and having traveled to South End, it does give you a better perspective on how badly this plan is needed. So even tonight, in one of our consent items, I think it was item number 30, that we did approve $11 million, I think, for the South End Rail Trail. That's an important link, a bridge there that connects the uptown and
Still
south.
coming up?
It's coming up.
Oh, it's coming up? Well, it's going to be good. Okay.
It's not done yet.
So yeah, so we got, it's still a lot of development going on there too. That's going to be contributing to making this plan bringing it to fruition. So
you don't even resemble me.
Huh?
So,
Thank you.
check the
All
voting
right,
record.
I support the
before-
motions, yes.
Before we take the vote, two things I think that are important. Councilmember Driggs mentioned resources, and Mayor Pro Tem mentioned will to act. And what we have here is a plan, and sometimes I wonder if it would be something that we would actually come back to you and say, if in the next 5 years, if you had to lay out an action plan that either required the will to act or resources or both, what would those things be to make this plan work? And I think that's an important part of what we're trying to struggle with now, is that we can't allocate resources if we don't know what's on first to get done. And we approve these area plans, and they're really well done. Often we talk about, do we have something for the entire city? I bet if we actually laid out something that was from the most recently approved area plans, we'd have a good idea what our vision was. I don't think that we'd have a good idea of how to plan for it and resource it. And I mean that in the terms of the physical space that we want people to have and how they feel. So I'm going to say to both our fabulous planning director and our manager that I think these plans ought to come back with top 10 things that you could do just by a vote, as well as the top 10 things you should do that require resources. Because we're never going to get to the point that, I know we're going to approve the budget next, but we're never going to get to a place where we're going to be able to put all of that out on the table based upon the adoption of the plan without your help. So with that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you all, the people that participated in this plan, the people that chose to live in South End before it was South End. And I hope at some point, guys, Vision Zero is absolutely essential over there. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is 11, and it is our recommendation to adopt the fiscal year 2019 operating budget and fiscal year 2019-2023 community investment plan. And there are a number of actions that we have, A through J actually. I'm going to turn it over to the chair of the Budget Committee for remarks, but I think we've all had an opportunity to make a number of remarks over the last 8 weeks.
Too late to make amendments?
Oh, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear a thing over there. But what I'd like to say to the community is that we started this process in February, when we started talking about what were our greatest priorities, our greatest needs, and our greatest priorities. And those things changed since February. and we've adjusted to that change. I would say that I expect everyone around this dais has something that they could really be proud of that's in this budget, and there's probably something that you'd like to do differently. But that's why we have 11 people working together to put together something that's a document that plans for our future. And if everyone was happy, that would be great. But I would tell you, I think everyone should understand the depth of work that went into this document and the preparation that it takes. And I think it puts us on a solid footing. Not doing everything that we want, and addressing some of our greatest needs. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Phipps to talk to us a little bit as budget chair. Let me just, procedure-wise, I will ask if there is, for a motion from the chair for adoption of the budget as stated in the...
I do.
You move it.
I now pronounce you budget.
Okay, so the chair just recommended adoption of items A through J. Ms. Mayfield second, third over here. So any discussion?
Yes, Mayor, I have some things I would like to say.
Yes, please.
Gotta throw a bike.
Mayor, this is a committee booklet, though.
All right, Mr. Phipps.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor and members of council. And this evening, we vote to adopt our fiscal year-end 2019 operating budget and the fiscal year-end, fiscal year 2019 through 2023 community investment plan. This represents the culmination of over 6 months of work from staff and us around this dais. Following the discussion and preliminary votes meeting on June 4th, staff has now compiled the necessary documents for us to adopt the budget. I would again like to thank the members of the Budget Committee, Mr. Driggs, Vice Chair, Ms. Mayfield, Ms. Ashmira, and Mr. Bukhari, and the full City Council for all of the time and effort put into this budget process. Collectively, the two groups have met 9 times solely focused on this budget. I would also like to thank the City Manager for his approach to this year's budget and his critical eye to how we operate and plan our community investment plan. I applaud his efforts to change the siloed approach in how we operate into something that helps us provide services under one city with a unified mission. I also want to thank our budget office for all their hard work and the countless hours spent in responding to Q&As and coordinating the budget committee meetings and council workshops. We all know that it takes many people to put together a budget, and this year was no exception. I particularly want to thank my fellow council members who contributed to the discussion to make an already comprehensive budget presented by the city manager even better. Some of the key takeaways of this budget are, this is a $2.6 billion budget. That's with a B. It's a big budget. I mean, it's a huge budget. Of that, $694 million is dedicated to the general fund, which provides for our police, fire, and solid waste, and a whole host of other services for our residents. It contains a 1-cent property tax adjustment, which helps public safety and promote our affordable housing strategies and other CIP projects. This means a modest increase of about 83 cents a month for a house assessed at $100,000. We're also helping to create great neighborhoods and maintain great neighborhoods. This budget provides funds to enhance affordable housing strategies, creates a pilot program for seniors at risk of losing their homes due to a rising tax burden. It completes the city's $10 million commitment for away home funding. It also expands the investments in South Park and South Charlotte neighborhoods more than what we had originally planned when we adopted the budget last year. It supports our initiatives in the historic West End, joins the efforts to enhance workforce development in collaboration with Goodwill, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, and Central Piedmont Community College. As far as community safety goes, it doubles the funding for streets, sidewalks, and pedestrian safety. It enhances public safety service with compensation, vehicles, additional support, and implements the community policing crisis response team. It creates a retiree health investment account for sworn police officers and firefighters, and it completes funding for 6 police stations and plans funding for a new fire station. This budget makes it easier for businesses to do business in our city. It revamps the land development permitting process and implements enhanced reviews It establishes the community business cafes and concierge program. As far as being an employer of choice, it provides a healthcare premium holiday this August. This means that employees will not have to pay for healthcare for a whole month. It also provides a 3% merit-based raise for salaried employees, provides an overall increase of an average 3.5% for hourly employees, and city employees will be eligible for an all-access transit pass with CATS for as little as $33 a year. This is a savings of over $1,400 annually. As far as global leadership goes, it sets a goal of becoming a national leader in the circular economy and begins our work with Envision Charlotte in this area. This budget includes a modest increase to water and sewer and stormwater and solid waste fees, no increase to the base transit fare for CATS, and it continues to fund the needs of the airport while maintaining lower per and plane passenger rates among all large hub airports. So through vision, strategy, and action, this budget makes the necessary investments we feel to maintain operations and infrastructure while taking strides towards ensuring that Charlotte is well positioned as the winning city of tomorrow. So with that said, I would encourage my colleagues to support this budget. I would encourage all of my colleagues to support this budget in as much as we have taken the time to listen to the community, to understand what the needs are, and this is a way that we can feel that we can begin to address the needs and some of the things that that's been laid out before us by the Opportunity Task Force. And with this document, I think it makes us well on our way to helping to do those things. So with that said, Manager and Mayor, I'm ready to.
We have a motion and a second to adopt items A through J. Any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, Mr. Drake, sorry, didn't see you.
Thank you, Mayor. I've made some of my opinions about this known, so I'm going to be brief right now. I think there are many good things in the budget, and I certainly commend the manager and the staff for putting together a great financial plan. I'd also like to acknowledge Deputy City Manager Sabrina Joy Hogg and Deputy Director Phil Rieger, who spent a great deal of time with me during the formative stages of the budget. A centerpiece is clearly the housing investment, which I think is an investment in the social health of our community. It's a partnership with the private sector, which is leverages the investment and brings in other parties. A good approach. I was pleased that we were able to specifically address the situation with CMPD, where the officers had really reached a point where they felt underpaid. We weren't able to do everything they wanted for them, but I hope they appreciate the significant investment we made there and in all of our other employees. It wasn't limited to CMPD, although that was a pressure spot, but other employees should be pleased that their health costs aren't going up and that they're getting a month off in August from premiums. It's quite a significant benefit for them. I also recognize that for once my district is recognized in the budget, and we have $5 million, which we appreciate, and a road project which will eventually fund $20 million. So there's a lot to like, and I wish I could just sort of stop there and say congratulations. The concerns I have are, for one, that I can't accept the fact that a tax increase is necessary in order for us to continue to provide city services at a time when the economy is booming and the base, our property base is growing rapidly through construction, organic growth. So I would have preferred at least to see a budget in which we did not have a tax increase and understand what that might look like. The other concern I have is, as I've noted a number of times, the capital investment that we're making of $290 million in total is much larger than we're going to be able to make in coming bond cycles. And I have a concern about our capacity in the future to maintain the momentum that we're establishing with this budget. And for those reasons, in spite of my appreciation of the good things that are in there, I'm afraid I will not be able to support it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bakari.
Thank you. I can tell you from a new council member's perspective, having been on only 6 months with the other newly elected folks, I'll speak for myself. This was a very interesting and special process to go through. I got to see staff working at their best. I appreciate what you guys did. I got to see my council colleagues really work hard, work a lot of hours, and come up with some creative and innovative ideas. I'm grateful to have experienced that with you. And I also saw my council colleagues collaborate, and not always when they didn't necessarily have to all the time. So I appreciate that, and it's amazing what we can accomplish when we work together. Mr. Manager, you've done an excellent job on the budget. You've done a lot of great things. I think I can honestly sit here and say for police officer pay for steps 1 through 12, you stepped to the plate and did something extraordinary. And I know this community appreciates you for doing that. South Park CNIP and getting an additional $5 million there is going to put a lot of infrastructure capital spend where it is desperately needed. So I thank you all for doing that. And I appreciate joining us all and taking a bold stance on affordable housing. I think that's going to be something that hopefully will pay huge dividends to a huge crisis that we have. I also, after much soul searching, have decided, though, that with all of those great things I love, I am not going to be able to support the budget. And it's not because I don't think those are awesome and incredible things that I obviously am well behind. It's because, when I look at the cons here, I cannot support a 1-cent tax increase. I think we could have done all those things. It was within our power to prioritize and make some tough cuts and tough decisions. And, I just go back to that quote I said earlier where governments don't raise taxes to fund their top pressing priorities. They raise taxes to keep funding their lowest priorities. So because of that, and because to some extent, I think we had an opportunity to finish the masterpiece of police officer pay this year with step 13 and bringing that to 6.5%. I would say I look forward to working with the manager and all of my colleagues and staff after this budget vote to finish that off. So I'm a no vote, but I don't want anyone to get the impression that there isn't a lot in this budget that's to be proud of.
All right, Ms. Ajmira.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like my colleagues, I would like to recognize the work that staff has done, countless hours. I recognize number of hours that you have put in over the weekends, overtime. I appreciate that, and our Mr. Manager. And this budget reflects our values as a city. As we take a bold step forward in addressing many challenges and issues that our city faces, from affordable housing to good-paying jobs to safety to smart infrastructure to being a global leader in environment sustainability, and also ensuring that we are taking care of our employees. Mr. Phipps, chair of the Budget Committee, did a pretty good job of going over all the details, so I'm not going to repeat any of that, but I would like to highlight one important program that we were able to include in our budget, which is the sliding scale affordable health care based on wages, to ensure that all our employees can afford to participate in our health care benefits, especially those who make less than $55,000 a year, which includes our water, our solid waste, our police department, and our fire department. We heard very loud and clear from many employees who spent over 10% of their salary in just paying premiums. So our budget includes that. We want to appreciate the work that you do. You work very hard for our city, and we recognize that. So I see many of our employees here, Charlotte Water, Solid Waste. So I want to say thank you for all that you do. And with that, I support this budget.
Dr. Harlow?
Didn't want us to, glad Ms. Ajmira spoke, didn't want us to end on, wanted us to end on a positive note, so I'll echo some of the sentiments. What I believe as a new council member and dealing with our first budget, and our mayor has consistently reminded us this is our most important policy document each year. So I was proud to be a part of the deliberations and adding some things to it. I think where you can always look at what people's priorities are about where they're spending their money. And so, Mr. Manager, kudos to you and your team and all of our staff for really kind of taking a variety of opinions and a variety of priorities and jamming them into into this budget. I believe that good policy is generally when everyone wins a little bit. There's always going to be a little bit more winners than losers, and that's a good thing. Not everyone gets everything that they want, but everyone gets something. I think this certainly is a housing budget, without a doubt. We know that, and so credit to the community for stepping up and really voicing your opinions on where you all feel that we should be making these large-scale investments. We know that $50 million around housing is only a drop in this larger billion-dollar problem bucket. But we think that this commitment, and hopefully voters will approve that and approve that commitment in November, will really help send a strong signal to our nonprofit and private sector partners who are ready to get into this game with us as it relates to our housing problems, but also our infrastructure investments, our creative investments around sustainability and the environment. I'm proud to support this budget because of all of those things. District 2 is highly served in this budget. The investment, continued partnership with Center City Partners and the Historic West End Initiative. I'll continue to advocate for more and more funding in the future for aging in place and how we can continue to turn a pilot into a permanent sustainable program in the long term to support anti-displacement efforts for our fixed income seniors and those affected by gentrification. Our CNIP investments around the Beatties Ford Road corridor and Sunset and West Trade and Roswell's Ferry and all over this city. So I believe that this budget it's a good budget, it's fair, it certainly speaks to our priorities. I will support it.
Thank you. Mr. Winston.
So I'm proud to support this budget because it takes something that we do so well as a city and really turns it up a notch, and that's the public-private partnerships. I think we're taking the bold steps that we all said we would as it pertains to affordable housing or building neighborhoods in a different way. But we did it in a way that we're getting buy-in from our corporate partners and other stakeholders in a way that hasn't been done in this town before. I look at Dr. Harlow's, spurred by Mr. Bakari's kind of idea of getting more public funding by tying that with the ability to get more funding from other partners within the community, within his Aging in Place initiative, and Mr. Bakari trying to get more capital funds into District 6. I think that's a good model and tool that we will look to work with, and future councils will look to take to use in the best manner going forward. I look at what Mr. Mitchell and I have done to get $50,000 put in to really solidify Charlotte as a My Brother's Keeper city and get that buy-in from all different parts of the community to really really give focus to young black men in our community who are historically underserved, to really try to raise that level for all people, to say that if we don't deal with the least of us, you know, we're not going to deal with the larger problem. So in the end, I feel like this budget works to make the city more equitable and does it by making it more accessible. And we're doing this by working together in an interconnected fashion. So I thank everybody for the work that we did to get here.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. So my colleagues have talked a lot about this budget process, which was really quite different for those of us who've been on council. It was different than it was the past 2 years. There was a lot of creative thinking that went into this budget process. The staff worked awfully hard on it, as did council members. So I appreciate all the efforts that went into this. And I do want to address the notion of a tax increase. We are a city that is growing at an incredible rate, and I know I, as a citizen, and a lot of people will say to me, well, if we're adding somebody every day, or 60 people every day, aren't they bringing that tax revenue? And in theory, that happens, but it gets to this breaking point where now you're not talking about adding a police officer per capita. At some point, you hit the point where you have to add a police station, or you have to build a new pump station to serve new neighborhoods. And so you've got to make these capital investments. And I feel like a lot of this budget reflects that need to really step up some of our capital investments to be the kind of city that attracts businesses, that attracts people at all income levels. And I think we reflected that by saying we know we need to invest in housing, we know we need to invest in workforce development. And I just want to go back to the Opportunity Task Force that ranked us so low in accessing economic opportunity, and that's because the way it's measured was how hard it is to get from the bottom rung of the ladder to the top end. And in Charlotte, that top end has moved so fast that it creates a bigger gap, and it makes it more difficult to move up economically. And so I think this budget reflects the fact that we are trying to give people more access to opportunity, train people so that they can have better jobs, put a roof over their heads so that they can have a stabilized life. And I'm very, I really look at that minimal tax increase as an investment in the future of our city. So I will be supporting this budget.
All right, thank you. If there are no further comments, again, commendations to the city manager and the entire city team for the work that you've done. We appreciate you. We respect your work on this document and bringing it together so that we can all have an opportunity to talk about what this city can be and see the future for it. With that, I think we've all had a chance to comment. So it chose to. So all in favor of adoption of items 7A through J to adopt the fiscal year 2019 appropriations and tax levy ordinance, the community reinvestment plan for FY 2019-23, and the FY 20 total rewards compensation and benefits resolution, and associated human resources contract, and other documents required for implementation of the annual budget ordinance. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please raise your hand.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, I would like to invite my colleagues tomorrow morning. We'll be rolling out this budget to the Tuesday morning breakfast forum, and you can join me as well as the strategy and budget team for their presentation tomorrow at the Belmont Center at 8:30. So
8:30, great.
certainly the budget.
So we have to get out of here by 8:30 in time for everybody to be there by 8:30 tomorrow morning,
So I
right?
extend the invitation to certainly the budget committee and anybody else that wants to come up and share. Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is 12. It is the adoption of resolutions authorizing staff to proceed with the necessary actions to conduct a general obligation bond referendum on November 6th. This adoption of the bond referendum will reflect the work that the document that we just approved for issuing debt to accomplish the projects in our capital investment plan, primarily around housing, transportation, and I believe I would call it community safety, including sidewalks and police. I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Driggs.
Mayor and colleagues, I just want to point out that notwithstanding the comments I made in the position I just took on the budget, it is my position that opposing the procedural implementation of an adopted council policy is not a constructive stance, so I will be supporting this without in any way, in my mind, contradicting the vote that I just cast on the budget. Thank you.
I think we know you well. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. The next item is, we're going to go back and we're looking at agenda item 13. Did I skip?
Yeah, that's right. You're right.
Item 13. Ratify an amended and restated 2018 agreement for the continued consolidation of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. And this is to make sure that we have an interlocal agreement between the city and the county for covering services, policing services in the extraterritorial jurisdictions. And we are doing this for the town of Pineville. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, now we're going to go to the consent items that were pulled to be placed on the business agenda. And I think I have 30, item 30 first, item 44, 35, and then 44. That's it, South End Rail Trail. All right, so this action is to authorize the city manager to execute public-private partnership agreements for the South End Rail Trail on the I-277 bridge and adopt a budget ordinance appropriating $11 million from public and private contributions to the general investment fund for the said project. Do I have a motion? I have Mr. Eggleston motion. Who's got a second?
Second.
Ms. Mayfield. All right, any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. The next item that we have, let me see. Is it 35? Thank you. The next one.
I had a comment on that one. I didn't get a chance. Sorry, I was re-shifting. Is it too late? I guess we already voted. I was going to vote yes anyway, but it's fine.
Okay.
Can
Okay.
I make the comment anyway?
Agenda item 35, construction.
Need not.
I'm sorry, what is going on around here? I'm like, all right, we're on item 35, construction manager at risk services for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Central Division Station Project to award a construction manager at-risk contract in an amount not to exceed $20 million with Edifice for the construction phase of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department Central State Division Station Project. I believe, Mr. Driggs, you pulled this one out? Or no, Mr. Winston pulled it out, excuse me. Mr. Winston, let's have a motion to approve. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second further, now discussion. Mr. Winston.
So the reason I pulled this has to do with my concerns around our SBE and MBE goals on this project. Our small business entity goal is only 14%, and our minority business entity goal is only 10%. I think that's weak. I think that it needs to be much higher. I don't necessarily have a scientific answer for where that number should be. My gut tells me I want it to be about 25 to 20%, especially since this is an aspirational goal. We know that if we don't hit these numbers, the project is not going to stop. But I think 14 and 10% definitely does not even begin to address the equity issues that we have around small businesses owned by women and minorities in this city. And to set the example, when we have projects, especially big projects like this, like a police station that is going to be, should be an iconic structure in a neighborhood for generations to come, we should do our best to raise the bar, especially around this very important and identified equity issue. And I don't think we're doing this right here, right now. I understand just in raising this question with staff, if we were at this point, I've been told to raise that goal, that we would have to go through the rebidding process. So I'm bringing this really to my colleagues to see if anybody else shares the concerns that I have or has more experience in dealing with this, to see how we can set our expectations higher in our construction products and our economic development as we go forward.
All right, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and to my colleague, Councilman Winston, thank you for pulling this. I saw the write-up. I guess staff, you are responding that based on our methodology, that this is how we got to 14%. And I will agree. Two things. One, this will be in the ED committee agenda on Thursday. Secondly, staff, you need to send out, if you don't mind, sending out that methodology in advance so the committee can review it on Tuesday. But I do think when you look over our CMS at risk projects, even disparity study said that we get 20% participation. And so we need to look at that methodology very carefully and make sure we can have 20% participation, particularly on this type of construction. There's a lot of cranes in our city, which is a good thing, but there's a lot of opportunities in using even our workforce development to create jobs. So Councilman Winston, thank you for bringing to our attention. And ED committee members, We look forward to the conversation on Thursday to change the methodology. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Driggs.
Right, I just wanted to note that these numbers are arrived at through a process that is kind of dictated by the legal environment. That's why we need a disparity study in the first place, because it is required to prove that we're not being discriminatory in a different way with the way we award our contracts. So as the chairman has pointed out, we're going to take another look at that based on the new disparity study that we received. I personally don't believe that saying that this is the number it has to be is right. I think we need to follow the procedures that are suggested by the findings of the disparity study and try to aim high in that context. Thank you.
I'd like to
Yes,
make
Mr.
a secondary motion that we defer awarding this contract until at least the Economic Development Committee is able to take up this issue on Thursday and see if they can, if there's any type of different guidance or methodology that we can put behind this particular contract, but also other contracts moving forward.
Second.
Second.
All right, so Mr. Driggs, and then I'm going to ask our city attorney about our process here, because I am not certain what we can do when we've had a bid or what liabilities it would have if we change that bid. Mr. Driggs?
Essentially the same question I had. I think we need to be prospective in changing our policies about these things, and we've gone pretty far down the road in offering this contract and stating the terms on which we were offering it and vetting the responses that we got in terms of their compliance with our policy. So I do think that the bidder here would regard it as kind of an unfair reversal or moving of the goalposts. If we said, you know what, we want to think about it some more, and we may change the rules. They have to do a lot of work in order to establish their compliance or justify their failure to comply. And we would be pushing them right back to the starting line if we said, oh, you know what, the rules are now different. So I would hope that we could visit our policies and make such changes as the new disparity study indicates, but not inflict on people that bid fairly and responsibly in the context of our old policy.
And can I respond? Can I respond?
Let's see if we can get our attorney, because I don't think that this is there are policy issues here that you've raised that are have been referred to ED, but on an item where we have it on the agenda, let's find out what our rules are. Mr. Hageman?
I interpret Mr. Winston's motion as a motion to defer. It's a
Substitute
motion to defer, and unless there's some reason it creates a timing problem, I don't have any legal issue with a deferral. We can take a look at it and answer the questions that have been asked. It may be that there's things we can't do including for the reasons that Mr. Driggs articulated, but the motion is simply a motion to defer,
Right.
Which does not cause me legal concern. That motion does not.
So let me make sure that I understand. Is the motion I want to make, because I think the intent was I thought I heard you say, and correct me, to see if we could go back and take a look at the participation in this particular contract. Deferring, I want to make sure, I don't want us to defer for deferring. I think if there's a particular intent for it, I'm just seeking a...
My substitute motion was to defer approval of this contract. And the reason being that the Economic Development Committee is going to have a conversation that is germane to the issues that are brought up with the problems that I have with said contract. So I would like to lean on my colleagues to see if they could provide me and us with further guidance on how to, and taking in context the law and what we're charged to do, what kind of tools that we'll have with this and moving forward.
So the motion, again, I want to restate it. Yeah. The motion is to defer and ask for the Economic Development Committee to determine if there are changes that could better improve the issues or address the issues that you've raised. And that was in minority participation.
Yeah,
all right?
yes,
Is that, I want to make sure. It's really important because people need to know what they're doing when you get it in committee. Absolutely. Not everybody has a different perspective of, well, this is what I thought you meant. Absolutely. So I'm just trying to get it out there.
Absolutely.
All right, so Mr. Driggs?
Right. I don't know if there's a legal issue here in the sense that I don't believe we're committed to any particular terms or bound in any way to complete So I guess my question is for the manager. Does it hurt our commercial relationships with contractors when we get this far down the road with them and then inform them that we've decided to apply different criteria for the award of the contract?
And so, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Driggs, that would be my concern, that we get so far down the road with a particular item and it gets to the dais and then it gets sent back for a discussion about the rules of engagement that got us to that far.
You got it.
Okay, Mr. Bakari's next. I know, but can we do, I missed him before, and I apologize for doing that, so.
I would tend to agree with Councilman Driggs on his point on moving the goalpost at this point. But I would agree with Councilman Winston's broader motion to go back and have a chance to look at, to make sure the machine that churns out the number had all the right inputs in it, first of all, as we explore the parameters. More importantly for me would be to also, in the ED committee, get an understanding of the historical track record of this company sticking to project timelines, sticking to initially defined and agreed upon budgets, and actually meeting the defined percentage of MWSBE goals. And I'd like to see how that stacks up and how it relates to the decisioning process that went into this.
Okay, I think the staff can provide that information. Mr. Winston?
You know, I hear the down the road sentiment and argument. Honestly, and specifically in this situation, you know, if I had been made aware of these goals that were set 2 months ago, I would have raised this. But this is the first time that I'm seeing this. So if we want to avoid this problem at the dais, then we should figure out a way to involve council in these issues beforehand. Secondly, if builders, if he doesn't want to build or they don't want to build this police station, we're in an economy where growth is happening. Somebody else is going to step in and is going to want to do business with this city, and they're going to continue to want to. You know what? Again, this is an equity issue. So there's a large population of our city that is saying that for generations we have been locked out of doing business with this city. So, you know, if you want to talk about changing the goalposts for this one particular company, there's a large population is going to say that goalpost has been pushed further and further and further and further back with every single project that this city goes forth on. So if it's about getting it right for the population at large, versus making it inconvenient for maybe one company here and there, I'm going to go with the body at large.
All right, we have a motion. Further discussion? Anyone else? Mr. Driggs?
Sorry, one more. It's a $20 million contract. This company incurred substantial costs in good faith, abiding by the rules that they were aware of. And imagine you show up for a closing on a house and the guy tells you, I've changed my mind. It's got to be $50,000 more, or whatever, change the terms. I think that our reputation as a business party is harmed by situations where we take something that is this fully baked and say, guess what? Now you have to wait until we decide what our new rules are, and then, because I don't believe my colleague is arguing that the rules that we have were wrongly applied to arrive at these goals. I think the contention is that we need to wait until we have new rules and then tell the contractor that they have to play by those rules. And I just personally would not do that to somebody in a business transaction.
All right. Ms. Mayor Pro Tem and then Mr. Eggleston.
So my question is for actually the Economic Development Chair.
Mr. Mitchell, you have a question.
So the scope of the discussion at the next committee meeting, my understanding is it's around, is the way we're going about this appropriate? Could we be tweaking the formula so that we can encourage more MWSBE? So to me, that sounds like a pretty big conversation that isn't going to be resolved in one committee meeting.
Oh, no, don't underestimate our committee.
Pardon?
Don't underestimate our committee.
Okay, well, that's a critical point.
We get it done. No, but
I think if,
seriously,
yeah, I mean, I think this is something that we have to take really seriously because we all, well, I hope we all have a desire to be able to give opportunity to more people to participate, but I don't want to get sideways with the notion that we could have one committee meeting and have a new set of rules and then let this project move forward. Whereas this could go on for quite a while, and now you've got a $20 million contract on hold that, you know, with all due respect to my colleague, I think in this environment, it's actually hard to secure, to tap down these kinds of contracts. So you're exposing yourself to cost escalations, and so I just want to make sure that we're talking about scope here in this discussion.
good question, Mayor Pro Tem. So on a serious note, I would say, it is our goal to address this by the end of the fiscal year. And for the ED committee, we actually have 2 meetings. So we have Thursday, June 14th, and we have June 25th. So I think in that time frame of 2 weeks, we can address this particular problem as well as look at other disparity recommendations that were made.
Bill has to be voted on by council.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
I just wanted to clarify what we're voting on right now because since Mr. Winston's motion was just to buy 2 weeks, and so I would agree that if we were voting right now to change the rules midstream here, that would be problematic, but we're not currently voting to change the rules, right?
It's a deferral.
It's just
It's a deferral.
deferral.
Right, so.
Well, no, wait, no, that's not, I want to read back, I think what, it was a deferral to look at the issues raised around minority participation in this contract. And then I believe Mr. Bakari said, well, let's see how the formula worked, what the numbers were, have they delivered before, I think there was one other portion of things. So it was specific to this contractor and this contract, as well as knowing that the ED committee was going to do that. That's why I restated it. It was to look at the minority participation on this contract.
But from a technical point, right now, the vote is just to defer.
No, it is I'm going to say this again.
Yes.
I'm going to say it is a motion to defer, but to ask the ED, we're not, what would we defer for? That's what I'm trying to make sure that the answers can come back. I don't want it to come back and you say, well, we just deferred it and no change. So we're trying to get to the gist of what. Yes, what's the intent?
This vote doesn't in and of itself change the rules that this contract was negotiated under.
I don't think, you can ask Mr. Winston.
The action that the action on my motion is to defer this contract. And I gave the reason for doing that is that this Thursday, our Economic Development Committee is going to have a discussion that is germane to the issues that I brought up. And I would like to rely on that discussion and the work that my colleagues do to inform me whether or not there's something we can do with this project or future projects. So that's just the reasoning. There's no more action beyond deferring.
Is this open-ended deferral or 2-week deferral? Or?
We can defer it for 2 weeks.
All right, so I have a defer the contract for a discussion on Thursday by the ED committee on the issues of minority business participation and what can be done for this contract as well as others in the future for 2 weeks deferral.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to get it right eventually, right? All right, I have Mr. Eggleston still has the floor.
And,
he asked what the motion was.
It's been waving back there for
I know, I'm going to get there, but I've also got Ms. Mayfield and Mr. Newton. So, Ms. Mayfield?
We're ready.
Did you? And Mr. Phipps.
Thank you, Mayor. So I share Mr. Winston's concerns. A number of us district representatives had the opportunity to speak at the Black Political Caucus yesterday evening to talk about not only the budget, but let the community ask questions. And my colleague, Mr. Newton, made a very valid point, which I've said many a time. You have the ability to say no. At the end of the day, it's a conversation of political will versus political ability. The Economic Development Committee has been pushing for us to increase minority outreach and partnership. This isn't a new conversation. Staff has been charged on more than one occasion to, if anything comes back or comes before council for a vote, don't keep giving us the excuse where we didn't find enough minorities to do this type of work. Part of their job is to go out and fill those gaps and let the community know, hey, because the community doesn't know what all work the city of Charlotte does. So if we know that there are gaps, part of the responsibilities that was charged when before Councilmember Mitchell took a brief hiatus was to go out into community and fill those gaps in so that we don't keep coming around the dais and having to have a conversation about the lack of minority opportunity. You just heard also, we love to throw out the Opportunity Task Force recommendation. And we love to say, well, the city was 50 out of 50 in upward mobility. That is never gonna change when we award a contract and I pull up, which anybody can, online, and you look at the leadership and the 10 individuals that are in leadership do not reflect the fact that the city of Charlotte is a majority minority community. We need to either make a conscious decision and stop putting it off until the next meeting to talk about it the next time, that we're going to commit to creating true economic opportunity, or we need to stop telling the community we're going to do that. It's just that simple. It is really political will versus political ability. And sometimes you need to say no. Now, my colleague's being generous by asking for a deferral because we could have just said move to deny, to start to kick the whole process back in again. But we received a disparity update. And what that the last disparity update said, in our minority women, small business enterprise, it has been overwhelmingly white women who have excelled and who have benefited financially the most. That is great for women. That's still not addressing the impact that African Americans, Latinos, and others in our community are not getting access to opportunities, and giving $20,000 out of a multi-million-dollar job, that's barely covering one employee. So we have to make a conscious decision that we're either going to move forward and be responsible to the entire community, or we need to stop telling the community that lie. I'm going to support us deferring. I am going to support Economic Development Committee and our chair on Economic Development Committee. But Mr. Manager, I hope you're hearing, staff needs to honestly not put us in this position where we're having this conversation around the dais, because we have sent a charge out. And that charge is more than 4 years old now. That was long before you got here. But we have the minutes from the meetings that say there was a charge for the leadership around economic development, and it's supposed to be creating job opportunities. We're supposed to go out and help figure out how to create opportunities within our community. Because working for somebody is not going to always be the answer. We need to also help, and we have the ability to help, to create jobs. Because we do it in so many other ways.
All right, Mr. Newton?
Pass.
Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, I just want to understand what we're doing with the deferral. Are we deferring with the intent that if we find the methodology should be changed, then are we saying that with this particular item that we're going to go back and change the rules to meet that? Is that what the deferral is for, or what?
I can tell you my thought. If you're asking me my thought, I can speak to it.
What's your motion? The motion in words, exactly. What's your motion?
I think he's talking about the next steps after the motion, right?
I'm talking about what is the real purpose of the deferral. If
the
we're going to
intention.
defer based on the outcome of this study of the parameters of how we choose it, and if those parameters change, does that mean that we're going to apply those to this deferred consent item?
I don't have the information to answer that question yet, which is why I'm deferring to after the meeting that you're having on Thursday, so I can be made more aware of the tools that we have and the options that we have. It might come in 2 weeks where I take Ms. Mayfield's approach and make a motion to deny and start this process over again. I might talk to my colleagues and it makes sense, hey, we need to move forward with this in 2 weeks and fix it in a different manner. I don't know. That's why I'm saying, let's defer this until after Thursday, when we have this information, when we're talking about this specific type of issue that we're going to face and we have to reckon with as we approve contracts moving forward.
Mayor?
Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Driggs?
I just want to point out that this deferral is tantamount to saying to the manager, you will right now you will suspend all conversations with any contractor that include any component, and you will advise them that the rules for that contract are going to be the new rules. And because consistency and fairness requires that. We can't isolate and target this one contract. We've got to make a decision that we don't want any contract signed under the old rules, and therefore that we will notify anybody, regardless of what stage of negotiation we're in with them, stand by, it could be different. So otherwise, I don't see why this company gets targeted for this treatment.
Mr. Winston?
I am not targeting this company. I am targeting how we award contracts.
But that applies to everybody.
And this is a policy question.
It applies to
policy,
everybody.
and a policy applies to everybody.
Okay.
So this is not about one. This is not about one single contract.
No more contracts.
Well,
That's not policy that I suggested.
Right, yeah.
That's what it has to be if you're going to do this. How can you target this one company?
And just move to deny it. Since if it's gonna be that much of a conversation when we're trying to figure out, because again, if you have a company, and if we're gonna make better decisions as a council, if we're gonna make better decisions that impact our entire community and not just certain segments of the community, there has to be a point where we stop saying, well, next time we'll try to get it better.
Okay, so we have a motion to defer the contract, to go to the Thursday Economic Development to discuss the issues under this contract under the minority business participation and what can be done for this contract based upon that review and concept, and to come back in 2 weeks.
Got it.
Is everybody good?
Yeah.
You understand what the motion is?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. We have two opposed.
Just two people?
Just two opposed.
Two opposed, Mr. Phipps and Mr. Driggs. I think that Mr. Driggs asked a good question. If we're going to continue to have contracts that are coming in, and there is the idea that we are changing what we have to do to award them, I think it would be better for us to slow it down until it's done, because it's nothing worse than having a business go through a process like that, which puts them in a very difficult position. So I think it's, this is what we're saying. And at the same time, I'm going to say on the other side of this is that we have this disparity study. And as much as I'd like to say, and believe me, I know this because, as I say, my brothers run a construction company. I've watched how it works, and I know how it works. If I could say that make equity possible today from this dais, that would be easy. But we don't sit here today with that ability, and I'm looking forward to the ED discussion to see how can we become more equitable, what can we do, and I'm hoping that this will in some ways begin the conversation for longer term, and especially open conversation about it, very open about what the requirements are. So I heard our city attorney say a deferral is appropriate to address the questions, and we'll do that. I think the policy question, and Mr. Mitchell, I think the policy question would be how long and how quickly can you come back? And with a sense of urgency around this, particularly since the disparity study is how many months old now? Several long months. Okay.
Mayor, just one comment.
Yes, sir.
All ED committee members, the meeting gonna start at 9 o'clock for breakfast now, and so we can get this done. Dr. Hollow said, wait a minute, bro.
All right, so that's it. Agenda item number 44, which is the Memorial Stadium Renovation Partnership. It's an action to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute an interlocal agreement with Mecklenburg County for the city to fund up to $3 million for the preparation, acquisition, and installation of a synthetic field at Memorial Stadium.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a motion for
Second.
approval? Mr. Eggleston made the motion, Mr. Mitchell second. Any further discussion? All right. no further I'm sorry, is that,
I was trying to collect my thoughts. I mean, I definitely want to comment on this one because I didn't get a chance to comment on the other one. I would have preferred to have commented on the other one, but it relates. So this, I think we need to know what this means to the county. And, you know, this is something that clearly isn't a vote to do or not do Memorial Stadium. That vote has already occurred. The county is doing it. And whether we're involved or not, that's going to happen. We have a unique opportunity here to get some things that might have a decent ROI back to us in 5 days a year and being able to utilize it for paying for this turf. But you know, when I did the quick, rough back of napkin math using super assumptions everywhere, the ROI shows kind of like, you know, over 7-year payback period. And I'm used to approving deals that are closer to like a 3-year payback period for something like this, for it to be, you know, good business sense. But even with that, there's another dynamic of the county wants us to partner. I don't know how much or how little. I would love to be able to hear directly from them if they actually care about this, because this is also a vote of support for us working more closely together in the future. So I guess all I'd say is that this is not directly related in our side of this aisle here on the city council to the vote that we just did and the assistance we are asking for from them for the rail trail / pedestrian bridge. But clearly these things are related because they're creative uses of different types and mechanisms of funding. So I feel very uncomfortable being in a position to vote on this, but I've talked to the manager and others, and since this vote is giving the manager authorization, not just stroking a check, I've gotten myself more comfortable. But Mr. Manager, I and probably several others, I'll let them speak for themselves if they do or don't agree, would encourage you to make sure we understand how the county views this. And is this something they are grateful and really want and they view as a strong partnership move, or is it like, I don't know? And what are they planning on doing for the Overstreet pedestrian bridge? And because again, if we don't get that funding from them on that, we have to take other drastic measures because that is in our core competency, while this is a nice to have. So that's my comments.
I'm trying to get you ahead before 9.
Okay, so we've got, I believe, do I have all 4 of you to speak? Mr. Eggleston, do you want to start? And we'll just come around to Mr. Winston.
Let the disruptive last minute.
I don't care. I'm not going to say too much.
Okay, we can do it the other way if you rather go last.
I mean, I spoke to my support of this in the Economic Development Committee recently, but I think it's an opportunity for us to, as Councilman Bakari said, to demonstrate a willingness to partner with the county. I hope and have faith that they will demonstrate that in return on the project that was mentioned, so that we can we've always talked about breaking the silos of city and county and school board, and I think we've got a couple opportunities here to do it. And so I think it's up to us to kind of extend that first olive branch and say, let's get to work. And this is a historic landmark, so y'all know I love it.
Dr. Harlow.
Yeah, I imagine there were some other conversations. I was a little lost there a little bit. I mean, you know, because I was just like, we've asked all the questions about being the project last money in on this thing. So if the county's not in, then we're not going to be in. So I was just confused. Now I read between the lines, and so I understand your comment about the bridge is now tied to this, and so I'm getting that. I just, you know, at some point, if we really want to get into this, you know, locked hands with our friends a few floors below us, we have to say, look, you know, we just got to be a little bit of trust. There's got to be a little bit of understanding that says, hey, we do this and we get this back on this deal. That's kind of how that has to go. Otherwise, we'll stay in the silos, or they won't want to do business with us because they always know we're going to maybe second guess it at the end here. So I don't want to second guess this. This is a good thing. I'll support it.
Thank you. Mr. Driggs.
I have listened to several explanations, and I have to say I'm still having a hard time understanding why we're putting $3 million into the stadium and they're putting $3 million into the rail trail. And I'm not generally in support of a project which is completely owned and controlled by one person, and then kind of part of the funding for it comes from another. So I think further to a discussion I had with Councilmember Bakari earlier, I'm wondering if we can approve this subject to the approval by the county commissioners of their investment in the rail trail, because I was made to understand that these two deals are linked. And if we'll show our good faith and we'll say, guys, it's up to you. We can move ahead with this thing if you want. We'll put the money out there, but we need to have you do your part.
Madam,
I'm going to come around, so.
I was just going to respond directly to that because never mind.
Okay, Mr. Winston.
You know, honestly, I struggle with this decision as well. You know, me and Driggs don't always agree on everything, but I'll show my fiscal conservatism on this one. I think that government should be investing in areas of growth and not necessarily just consumption. And as I look at the merits of this investment, it's a nice to have and not a must have. And, you know, I look at all the ways that we are already working to partner with the county. There are some must-have things that we are trying to do, and a lot of areas of must-haves where we can build that good faith. So, you know, it's going to go down to the wire for me, but I haven't been convinced in either fashion why I should support this. It does make me feel a little better when we look at this rail trail completion and the evening out of things, but like my colleague said, without some incentive that that's actually going to happen, it puts me even more on the fence of why I should support a project like this. We don't need it.
All right, Ms. Asmira.
I'm good, thank you.
All right, Mr. Bakari.
Yeah, I was just going to follow back up with Mr. Driggs because we spoke earlier and then we had more conversation afterwards. But Mr. Driggs is talking, so I will say it to you guys then. Mr. Driggs, the thought process was, I was originally in that camp when we talked earlier today and had a few more conversations, and the thought process evolved to the manager has the authority to spend $3 million or $0, and clearly he knows our concern that you know, we want a partnership, but to not make it look like an ultimatum, we want to really partner with the county in honesty, in authentic form. So we don't want it to look like we've thrown an ultimatum at them. Rather, we want them to know that's important to us. But so that's it. Hopefully that was helpful, Mr. Driggs.
I don't know that you know.
You can read the notes.
We'll put the streaming in reverse, and then it'll go back that way.
Thank God for live streaming.
Ready?
Watch Facebook Live.
Okay. There's been a motion, I believe, for approval. All in favor, please raise your hand. Yeah.
What did you say? That's in favor. Oh.
What?
I had another comment, I'm sorry.
Well, you missed your comment, return comment when we were talking, so do you want to say it again?
Oh, no.
I'm just joking.
I was just saying, real quick, after we talked today, we had a few more conversations, and I was originally in that camp of putting the contingency, but since the manager has authority to do this and doesn't have to do it, letting our expressed interest known to them that is important to us, but without making it feel like an ultimatum, so that county commission knows that we truly want to partner. We don't want to put an ultimatum on them, was where we fell out, but I'm open to being mind changed.
So I will just say on the record, we are authorizing the manager to enter into discussions with the county and to use his judgment up to $3 million in the completion.
All right, so we have a motion to approve and have the manager up to $3 million. I'm sorry, Mr. Hageman?
So the manager and I have had a side conversation, and I don't want you to inadvertently put him in a difficult position.
That would be a good idea.
Right, so when you see authorized to negotiate and execute, historically, I think what staff understands and how we interpret that is you've approved it, but the documents haven't been negotiated and written yet. It's a charge to carry this out. So if you're intending to give him the discretion to do it or not, that's a whole lot different than carry this out. And I'm a little bit concerned it could leave the manager in a difficult position.
So what would the action be if the idea would be to leave it to his discretion? What would they authorize the city manager to discreetly negotiate? Execute an interlocal agreement? I'm looking for the wording. Okay, so we're going as the action, and that allows, and the manager feels like he has the flexibility. You've all heard from the city attorney as well. All in favor of the motion, please say, raise your hand.
Second.
Raise your hand and say aye.
All opposed, raise your hands, please. All right, we have 2 opposed. Thank you very much. All right.
A wide variety of votes tonight.
The next agenda items are related to your nominations to the various boards and commissions. And Ms. Finch, you have a number of items to work.
There were 14 different boards and 30 appointments, but I'm happy to say there were 24 people that got 6 or more votes. So what I wanted to do was just read through it all, and if you so desired, make a motion at the end.
So this will be a single motion with the
24
people.
And then
are they in the order in which they're in the book?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you can mark down who those persons are, and then at the end, we'll accept all of those, and the remainder will come back at the next council meeting.
Correct,
So-
and I'll send an email out this evening with who will be considered for nomination at that
Thank
next
you.
meeting.
All right.
Okay. So Bachelor Arts Foundation, Keith Cradle received 11 votes. Charlotte International Cabinet, recommended by Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, Sven Gerzer received 10 nominations. The Cultural Ethnic category for International Cabinet had 2 appointments. Kamal Dimal received 7 nominations. Nailan Karakaya received 8 nominations. In the International Business category.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Under 2 appointments for 3 terms in the cultural and ethnic, we had Nailan
Karakaya.
Yes, and there was another person.
Kamal Dimal.
Okay, I don't think it was in our list.
Yeah, it was in our list.
I'm sorry, not on my list. No, I mean, in the book here.
Oh, no, the book only lists the people that would be incumbents, but
Okay.
it doesn't list everybody
Okay.
that had applications.
All right.
Okay, so the next category for International Cabinet was International Business. Jonelle Coswell received 10 nominations. In the Airport Staff Member category, Diane Carter received 10 nominations. In the Education Nonprofit category, Rona Chen received 7 nominations. In the At-Large category, Reinhard von Hennings received 10 nominations. For the Charlotte Mecklenburg Public Access Board, Jamal Harvey received 6 nominations. For the Charlotte Regional Visitors Authority, there were 2 at-large appointments. Matthew Hershey received 10 nominations, and we'll bring the other one back to you on the 25th. Tree Advisory, no one received at least 6 nominations. The Charlotte Water Advisory Committee for the Small Town Representative, Barry Webb received 11 nominations. And in the Financial Expert category, Leslie Jones received 11 nominations. In the Citizens Review Board, E. Thomas Bowers received 8 nominations. Nancy Hightower received 6 nominations. Tanya Jameson received 8 nominations, and we'll bring the other 2 appointments back to you on the 25th. The Civil Service Board, no one received at least 6 nominations. And we'll bring that back to you on the 25th. For the Historic District Commission, resident owner of Hermitage Court, James Jordan received 10 nominations. In the at-large category, Jill Walker received 10 nominations. In the Historic Landmarks Commission, there were 2 appointments. Jonathan Schultz received 9 nominations, and Edwin Wilson received 9 nominations. For Keep Charlotte Beautiful, there were 3 appointments. Tanya Clarkston received 11 nominations. Tariq Hamid received 11 nominations, and we'll bring the final one back to you. For Neighborhood Matching Grants Fund, recommended by the school superintendent, Doris Shivers received 8 nominations. For Passenger Vehicle for Hire in the Representative of the Hospitality Tourism Industry category, Sheila Etheridge Bodie received 10 nominations. And finally, for the Planning Commission, Cozy Watkins received 11 nominations.
Move to appoint everyone who got more than 6 nominations by
Second, all
acclamation.
in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody, any dissent? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor, council topics. Why don't I start with Mr. Newton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to take a moment and thank everyone who attended my town hall on Saturday. By all accounts, it was a tremendous success. We had a fantastic turnout. Had a couple of my fellow colleagues there as well. So thank you, Councilwoman Ajmera. Thank you, Councilmember Winston, for attending. Your presence did not go unnoticed, and it was really wonderful. It was really wonderful that you were there. Lots of donuts were eaten. Lots of coffee was drank. We had a really wonderful time. I wanted to thank Tracy Dodson as well, and our planning director, Tai Wo, for being there too. The community very much appreciated the information that they received from both of you, so thank you. In memory and honor of the passing of Susan Lindsay, who was a very involved, very important member of our community in East Charlotte, we will be holding the 50th annual Hickory Grove 4th of July parade this year. I think that there were a lot of questions and concern as to whether or not that would occur. Many people wanted to maintain the continuity of the oldest, longest-standing, most contiguous parade in all of Charlotte, and that's precisely what we're going to be doing. So if you don't have plans, or even if you do have plans, come on out to East Charlotte on July 4th, which is Wednesday, so Wednesday, July 4th at 10:30. We'll have a parade route from Hickory Grove Rec Center on Pence Road out to Harris, and then from Harris up to Sharon Amity. And you can stand on either side of that parade route and be a part of the best 4th of July parade in all of Charlotte. And then afterwards, so around 11:30, celebrate with us at the Grove Presbyterian Church. If you're interested in being in the parade, please reach out to me. My email is matt, M-A-T-T, Newton, at charlottenc.gov. Look forward to seeing everyone at the parade, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. July 4th, all right. Mr. Phipps?
Yes, I would just like to thank and congratulate the graduating class of Vance High School who had their ceremonies on this past Saturday on the campus of UNC Charlotte, all 376 of them. And just wanted to congratulate all the graduates that have had their ceremony so far. And I look forward to attending the Mallard Creek graduation tomorrow
I'll see you
at the
there.
Spectrum Center. So are you going to be sitting in VIP or are you going to be sitting on the stage?
I don't care where I sit. I'm fine, any place.
You changed it.
Ms. Mayfield?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also would like to congratulate the recent graduates. I had an opportunity to attend this past Saturday at Bojangles, the West Charlotte High School graduation. So congratulations to the 2018 class, and especially I would like to congratulate an amazing young man who I met when he was 11 years old, Mr. Austin Kaiser. We are extremely proud of you and your honor course, and you are going to do an amazing job when you head off to Livingstone, and we are so proud of you. I also want to invite my colleagues as well as the community. We will be having a community forum, police relations in neighborhoods of color. A lot of people don't realize that the city of Charlotte is one of only 15 cities that was chosen through the National League of Cities to be a part of a race and equity pilot. Part of that work is reconciliation work, and this will be our first entryway. The actual title is Racial Reconciliation Through Truth and Healing, Police Relationships in Communities of Color. This forum will be happening on June 22nd at 6 p.m. at St. Luke's Missionary Baptist Church, which is located at 1600 Norris Avenue. You can RSVP with my staff liaison, Ms. Kimberly Oliver, Oliver. Her email is koliver@charlottenc.gov, or you may call at 704-336-2180, and we would gladly send out the flyer for you to share in your community or your religious institution. Thank you.
Ms. Ashmira?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I have two items. Over the weekend, I had an opportunity to attend the active shooter survival training that was hosted by Indian American community, and we had a CMPD Lieutenant Huber there, along with Council Member Winston. Thank you for joining us. It was a great outreach in the community, and also very important techniques and in terms of what to do when you're faced with active shooter situation. I hope that more residents taking advantage of this. If you're interested in participating in this type of training, please email me. I'm happy to connect you with our CMPD, or you can directly email CMPD, but make sure to take advantage of this very important resource that we have. Also, the community had raised funding to support the youth programming that's been done by our CMPD. So I appreciate the community's support with our youth programs. Also, I had an opportunity to attend the Sustainability Summit that was hosted by Sustain Charlotte over the weekend. And there were discussions on affordable housing, to transportation choices, to local water quality and water resources. And we had several members from various communities there, from environment advocacy groups to transportation advocacy groups to affordable housing advocates. There were over 250 members attending this Sustainability Summit. And I was very pleased with the presentation that was done by Shannon Baines, the director of Sustain Charlotte, and he did the presentation on the progress that we have made, not just as a city, but as a city, as a county, and the school board, and where we need to focus more. And I was also joined by our staff, Rob Focus and Victoria Johnson, and we provided a brief update on environment sustainability initiatives that we are leading. We are taking a leadership role on this. So from preserving our tree canopy, we had talked also a little bit about circular economy initiative that is in the budget, and we also talked about resolution that was recently approved by the committee. So overall, it was really well received, and audience appreciate the efforts that, of our mayor and our city council overall. So I just wanted to pass those comments over to you all, that community is very appreciative of the work that we are doing to address various needs.
Mr. Mitchell?
Mayor, Council, thank you. Congratulations to the class of 2018 in North Mecklenburg, and especially to my youngest blessing, Nicole Ashley Mitchell. Daddy is proud.
All right.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Empty nester.
And pretty soon. So I wanted to just mention a few things. Every week we get a memo from the manager that's on our dais talking about what's upcoming. And so it's interesting. I know that summer is coming, and it's really good that we will meet in June. And then we have a couple of weeks off as a break. And then on July the 23rd, we'll be talking about our housing framework overview and the contracting threshold for the manager. I want to say that the adoption of this budget tonight really was a milestone when we talked about doing the housing bonds, no matter how much we talked, we knew we'd never be able to do enough. And one of the things that I like to always remember is that housing is a community issue, not just a city issue. It is more than just a home. The home is important, that building and that stable place to live, but it's got to be about workforce wages. And so I'm hopeful that as we begin our visioning for the future, we've got a lot of things on our list, but we've also got to really look carefully at giving people an opportunity to support themselves and be a part of our community in that regard as well. I also wanted to just say I went to the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I would like to say I've gotten there on time and on early to go to some of the workshops. We had a little bit of a mechanical problem, so we got there a little bit late. But I wanted to bring up 3 things that I found very interesting. The city of Arlington has a huge football stadium for the Dallas Cowboys, but they also host esports on a regular basis. And this esports idea is coming through with, it's not well regulated or organized right now, but I'm with the sports committee talked about how could cities begin to form esports teams and support them. It's something I really like to have a little bit more conversation on. The next one was the arts and cultural group that I went to speak with. We're not all invited, but someone would like, if someone would like to go to Burning Man. Oh, I'd love to go. Oh my gosh, wait a minute.
What?
Okay, there'll be a lottery for that one. But Charlotte was on their list. They sought me out and they asked if we would like to come down and see that. But what they were saying is the importance of seeing it is to meet the artists that are there and working that entire time. And what I learned from the group, and you have to go to Reno to go to Burning Man, not that that's a bad deal, but what we talked about was how art can play such a big role. And you remember when we had our retreat, Vintner said, let's do something festival, be known for it. Charleston's got Spoleto, Nashville's got music. We talk about this a lot. And I know this has been a hard year to put numbers on the paper and all the things that we said that we needed to do to recover from a very tough 2 years prior. But at some point, we have to start looking at what feeds our minds and our souls. And I do believe that it's time now. I know we've got the 250th party coming up. I would like for us to think about a goal of what comes out of that, that's really sustainable, that we can build on and be known. You know, you can't be Burning Man all across this country. But people have found ways to take 2 or 3 days and turn them into month-long festivals. And we need to begin to think about this. And then the final thing that I want to say is that there were many national speeches made at this conference, and Charlotte was called out twice. Brian Moynihan talked about Charlotte, the 50 million, and the private sector 50 million, and I like that he said, we are going to do it, and I was like, you are going to do it, but it was okay. You can do it. But the other time was when Barbara Lee, who has worked over 20 years to get women elected to public office, she said, I just wanted a woman president, but she says, what I realized is I have to have women mayors. And she again recognized Charlotte for having an African-American woman mayor. And what she was saying is that leadership counts for every part of our government, and what we need to do to cultivate leadership is very, very important. So I just wanted to share that with you from the trip to Boston for a very quick 2.5 days.
That's hard to follow. But I will say that we have one of our wonderful artists here from Charlotte, Ruth Ava Lyons, who performs at Burning Man every year. Yeah. So if you follow her on Facebook, there's some fabulous photos from her performances there. I just want to take the opportunity. I had a town hall 2 weeks ago, but we haven't had council topics. So thank you to, 2 weeks ago, all the staff that helped put that together. We had Chief Putney and Chief Johnson, our new fire chief, came out, and Lacey Williams from Neighborhood and Business Services, and we talked a lot about what the police department have done to move forward and work with the community to build trust and relationships. So thank you to everybody who worked hard on that and for everybody who came out or followed us on Facebook. And congratulations to all the graduates. It's weird not having someone graduate this year, but it's a big time for everybody's families who have a young person graduating. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there who will be celebrating this Sunday.
All right, Mr. Bakari was out and he's back, so Mr. Bakari.
Thank you. I'll speak on behalf of whatever Braxton's going to say. Do you mind if I cover it for you? I just wanted to say I had a really experience of a lifetime, not just in the ride along I was able to do, but in at the end of last week, spending an incredible amount of time editing all the film that was captured and putting out the documentary 1018 Officers Need Assistance. And it was a labor of love. It was incredible. Thank you to Metro Third Shift and Officer John Koukopoulos, who was a star of the show. Thank you to Braxton Winston, who became a bit of a main character in the show, and I didn't even realize it happened organically. And my hope is that it was something that captured the not just the sentiment of the police officers and everything they go through, but also the really tough national dialogue around either police accountability or police support. And usually people are either on one side or the other. And my goal with this film was to show how you could be both. And we need to have a conversation on both sides of that argument at the same table in this city. So if you didn't get a chance to see it, you can go on YouTube and type in Officers Need Assistance, and that will pop up. And I just thank everyone who helped me put it together.
Thank you. Mr. Winston?
Well, I say, Madam Mayor, as the one city council member that actually works in the arts, that Burning Man trip, probably makes
I'm a documentary
a lot of sense.
I'm a documentary
so
filmmaker.
I can come back with the most professional kind of advice and feedback that's relevant and germane to this issue. So thank you in advance for that. I was actually thinking about skipping council topics today, and I will keep it short. I just want to give a shout out, actually, to a young lady, Anna Cockrell, who I believe is a sophomore at University of Southern California.
Go Trojans.
But she's a Charlotte native and a product of Providence Day High School and track team, and they just won the national championship for team outdoor track and field, and they did it in a fantastic fashion. Anna was the second leg of the 4x400 relay, and USC had to win that race to win the national championship, and they did, but they did it in tremendous fashion in a way that I've never really seen. The race looked like it was out of hand, and that anchor leg just did something incredible, and I hope everybody in Charlotte gets to YouTube it, go to my Facebook page or wherever, and watch it. I think there's a lot of, and any sports kind of speaks that art imitates life thing, and this was definitely a race where that is the case. So folks, just keep running, find your stride, concentrate on your form, and just keep picking up those legs and put them down in front of you, and you never know what can happen.
And fight on, Trojans.
Sounds extraordinary.
I don't know.
All right, Mr. Driggs.
Councilmember Winston's guide to running, pick the legs up and put them down in front of you. Appreciate that.
It works better than you think, man.
Yeah, it's excellent advice. I just wanted to briefly thank the manager and the city attorney for spending time today with 4 members of the board of directors of South Charlotte Partners. This new group, as we heard during the presentations, is going to focus on kind of advocacy for South Charlotte, but also planning issues and trying to identify the needs of the public down there. I think you all know I've been very vocal over 4 years in advocating for more investment, and it's come down to, okay, what exactly do you want? So we're going to try to get specific about that. And I hope that we can do this, and I feel that we will do this in a way that everybody understands the opportunity for the city of having investments in an area where the return on those investments is substantial and might even meet Mr. Bakari's 3-year time frame for payback period. So this is meant to be a cooperative effort among all of us to do something good for our city and to generate growth that will help to support the other things we want to do, like affordable housing. So I hope we can work with South Charlotte Partners, and again, I thank you for spending the time with them today.
Deal. I will, oh, you have a question, Mr. Phipps. Mr. Driggs has a question for Mr. Phipps.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Driggs, how can I help you?
Will you all be establishing an MSD?
Sorry, I can't hear.
Will you be establishing an MSD?
Municipal Service
We're
District.
talking about that. It would be very modestly funded, basically just in order to support, as in the other instances, to support the research and advocacy efforts of the group.
Another tax increase?
I was going to say, District 7 likes the taxes. Yeah.
Dr. Harlow.
Like 1/100 of a cent.
Dr. Harlow.
Thank you. Yes. So I just want to give credit to some community members, Charles Robinson, Greg Jackson, and a few folks, a few others. Forgive me for not naming everyone, but I got a call last night after I made an announcement at the Black Political Caucus meeting about a list of summer camps and if there was a need for folks who needed to send kids or grandkids to summer camps, knowing that school is out now, we want our children and our youth to be productive during their times off. And I got a call from a community engagement officer with Project Lift and said, I got 7 children here who really need something to do. Their parents really got a lot going on, and they got to pay to get them into this camp. And I said, how much you need? He said, oh, about $175 or so. I said, okay, we can do that. I'd offered a donation myself. I said, I'll put the rest out on my Facebook post. And I've just been overwhelmed and really excited and encouraged to see the responses so quickly just for these 7, but we have since, because of that, we funded those 7 kids in about 30 seconds, and then between another hour or so, we found out about another 30 children who needed help, and some folks that had reached out and said, well, we kind of opened up a little can there, but the online community support within an hour has being able to support almost 42 kids to go to summer camps now, just by a Facebook post and one phone call. So I just want to give credit to Gerard Jones, who made the initial call, and then some folks that kind of did some social media outreach on our behalf and on those kids' behalf. All these kids are going to be able to enjoy camps going forward for the summer. We still do have a long list of opportunities. I've talked with a few camp directors, and if you just call our office, Amanda Birch will pick the phone up, 704-336-2064. She does not know I gave that number out yet, but she has the list on her desk, and we can direct you to some summer programs for your children or anyone that you may have guardianship over. We want to make sure that everyone has a productive summer. So and this is all over the city. This is not just for District 2. While a good bit of that list is focused in District 2, this list encourages participation all over the city. So I just want to say kudos to the community, and if you need still something for your children to do for the summer, we've got an opportunity for them through some of our partners.
Thank you. Mr. Eggleston?
I will be brief so everybody can go home, but 2 quick shout outs. I did want to I received a very kind invitation last week from some new friends who were having a Ramadan iftar dinner up at Hornets Nest Park, and it was an amazing experience. I got to do my first one of those last year. This was my second. I was joined by Representative Autry and Senator Tart, and we had a wonderful time, a wonderful meal, and met some wonderful people. So thank you to them. And then also wanted to thank the folks at the Arts and Science Council who held one of their Culture Blocks events right at the intersection of Councilmember Phipps and my district in the Hidden Valley and Farm Crest communities. And it was well attended by folks from both of those communities who got to participate in being a part of some art projects and experiences lots of children there that got to do some things that you could just see in their eyes. They were inspired and kind of blown away by their ability to create beautiful art, and then also got to see some professional musicians and artists perform their trade. So it was a really neat event over at the Sugar Creek Rec Center, and I appreciate the Arts and Science Council for all they do in our community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank
Motion to
you.
adjourn.
No, I wondered if the manager and the attorney had anything, topics they'd like to bring up.
Smart move, guys.
To reopen the budget.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second, all right.
All right.